Hello, I'm Draconem. Welcome to talking about a bunch of shit I hope is at least marginally related to a legal topic I introduce. Today we'll be discussing House Resolution 3200, America's Affordable Health Choices Act of 2009, with our distinguished guest, former governor of Alaska and vice presidential candidate, Sarah Palin. Welcome to the show, Governor Palin. We're happy to have you on.
Why, thank you, you betcha.
So, Governor Palin, can you explain the following leaping rationale? How do you logically get from things set forth in Section 1233 of the bill, like explaining last will and testament and palliative versus hospice care, all the way to recommending euthanasia to bend the curve on health care costs by pulling the plug on grandma?
With all due respect, it's misleading for the president to describe this section as an entirely voluntary provision that simply increases the information offered to Medicare recipients. The issue is the context in which that information is provided and the coercive effect these consultations will have in that context. Section 1233 authorizes advanced care planning consultations for senior citizens on Medicare every 5 years, and more often, if there is a significant change in the health condition of the individual or upon admission to a skilled nursing facility, a long-term care facility or a hospice program. During those consultations, practitioners must explain the continuum of end-of-life services and supports available, including palliative care and hospice, and the government benefits available to pay for such services.
Okay, just as long as we are perfectly clear that a patient's decision to discuss these things is voluntarily, as is any decision about the care they want to receive, which is consistent with what President Obama has said.
Now put this in context.
Yes, please do. This should be good.
You betcha. These consultations are authorized whenever a Medicare recipient's health changes significantly or when they enter a nursing home, and they are part of a bill whose stated purpose is to reduce the growth in health care spending. Is it any wonder that senior citizens might view such consultations as attempts to convince them to help reduce health care costs by accepting minimal end-of-life care? As Charles Lane notes in the Washington Post, Section 1233 addresses compassionate goals and disconcerting proximity to fiscal ones. If it's all about obviating suffering, emotional or physical, what's it doing in a measure to bend the curve on health care costs?
Oh my. Is that your argument?
You betcha.
Okay then. Well, first off, it's a total non-squitcher to argue that because it's in a bill intended to reduce healthcare costs overall, that this particular provision somehow amounts to authorizing these so-called death panels. Where are the death panels in there anyway? No site for that on your Facebook, I noticed. Why is that? Oh yeah, because they're so not fucking in there, lady. Simply not anywhere in the bill, explicitly or implied or even suggested or faintly hinted at. Period. There is literally no amount of blathering bullshit to be said or posted on Facebook that can defend that blatant lie. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, in this bill about any panel of doctors deciding whose life has more value. This is about doctors being reimbursed for discussing end-of-life care, such as wills, palliative versus hospice care, life support, etc. There is no incentive, reimbursement, or guideline for suggesting less expensive procedures. In fact, the economic incentive for doctors would be to suggest patients maximize all their end-of-life care and life support options. That's more money for the healthcare providers, but again they are reimbursed only to present options and explain what they are, not decide whose life has value. And again, there isn't anything about any sort of panel in this bill, let alone any death panels. To suggest so is patently absurd. You are basically calling a living will a death panel. What you said doesn't come even remotely close to explaining that leap of illogic.
Well, I understand all that, I do, but Joe Sixpack and Susie Homemaker and I aren't buying your government takeover. Joe the plumber and Tito the builder and Kathy the crafter, Queenie the quilter all know that, though not mandatory, as some on the right have claimed, The consultations envisioned in Section 1233 are quite purely voluntary, as Republican Levin asserts. To me, purely voluntary means not unless the patient requests one. Section 1233, however, lets doctors initiate the chat and gives them an incentive, money, to do so. Indeed, that's an incentive to insist. Patients may refuse without penalty, but many will bow to white-coated authority. Once they're in the meeting, the bill does permit formulation of a plug-pulling order right then and there. So when Earl Blumenauer denies that Section 1233 would place senior citizens in situations where they feel pressured to sign end-of-life directives that they would not otherwise sign, I don't think he's being realistic. Is that a death panel? You betcha it is.
The idea that this is not purely voluntary action by the patient is ridiculous and based on an absurd standard, that if a doctor initiates a discussion about any form of care, that therefore the patient's decision to participate in the discussion and make decisions about the care they want to receive is no longer voluntary. The doctor-patient relationship itself as it exists in our system today certainly violates that absurd standard. Furthermore, to imply that doctors are going to start strong-arming people to avoid end-of-life care and life-sustaining treatments is at best pure stupidity, at worst a purposeful attempt to mislead and scare gullible old people and the naive in general into believing a load of bullshit, crafted ad hoc for the sole purpose of furthering your foolish political agenda and personal desire to profit from the psychological warfare of lies, deception, propaganda, and fear tactics. Finally, to the point that you are equating counseling about the options patients have in a living will with death panels, did you not sign an Alaskan executive order that created a standard living will/death panel form and encouraged Alaskan healthcare professionals to encourage as many Alaskans as possible to complete and sign one of these living will/death panel forms?
Well, shoot, I signed so many executive orders, it's hard to say exactly what it said without seeing it. But I don't believe I did what you said. After all, why would I make all the arguments I've just made if I actually thought death panel forms were a good thing?
I have a copy of the order right here. Why don't I read a couple key passages from it? Whereas, Healthcare Decisions Day is designed to raise public awareness of the need to plan ahead for healthcare decisions related to end-of-life care and medical decision-making whenever patients are unable to speak for themselves and to encourage the specific use of advance directives to communicate these important healthcare decisions. Whereas, in Alaska Statute 13.52 provides the specifics of the advance directives law and offers a model form for patient use. Whereas, one of the principal goals of Healthcare Decisions Day is to encourage hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, continuing care retirement communities, and hospices to participate in a statewide effort to increase the number of Alaska's citizens with advance directives. Now, therefore, I, Sarah Palin, Governor of the State of Alaska, do hereby proclaim April 16, 2008 as Healthcare Decisions Day in Alaska, and I call this observance to the attention of all our citizens. Do you recall what you did now?
You betcha.
It seems quite impossible that your criticisms of the Affordable Health Choices Act would not also apply directly to your policies in Alaska. So what do you think? Should April 16th in Alaska be henceforth known as Death Panel/Pull the Fucking Plug on Grandma's socially unproductive and frankly a bit flatulent ass day?
You betcha.
Cool. I'm sure we can agree to disagree that I call them living wills and think they are an excellent idea, while you call them death panel forms and think they are a super fucking awesome ass pull the goddamn plug on the stupid ass unproductive old people to save the government money idea. Right.
You betcha.
Well, that concludes our show for today. I'd like to once again thank our distinguished guest Sarah Palin and invite her to join us again sometime, and you all next time, on the blah 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 legal topic blah show. This is Draconem, signing off for now.